Bomb. Okay, the show's apparently begun. Or did it really ever end? Because John and I were here last night for about 3.5 hours doing election night coverage for the Tuesday Texas primaries.
More primaries after the show today. We're doing 3 more hours.
Just kidding, but actually we are doing 3 more hours because I got Rebel headquarters, I got post game, and I got old school. So, by the way, if you'd like to see our stunning coverage of the primaries, plus an excellent and very fun post game we did last night.
It was. Primaries fun too.
Yes, about the first time that I ever worked on campaigns, and John as well. tytnetwork.com/join, and that way you'll get to watch old school live too. Speaking of which, we have a lot of news for you guys. Some stormy weather ahead for the Trump administration. Okay, but that Stormy Daniels story is actually very important. I'm going to do an update for you guys on Texas in a second in a couple of ways, including, oh, my man, Ted Cruz. Oh, my man, Ted Cruz. Okay.
Wait, who's this Ted Cruz you speak of?
I'm sorry.
That first name.
Raphael Edward Cruz, I should say. And as we did the election night coverage, one last thing here, come to me, Jesus, for 1 second. As we did the election night coverage last night, and we're back in the groove of doing election nights, it made me think of a man, perhaps this man, and what's coming in 2019. This shirt, by the way, is called Bernie So Punk, shoptyt.com. Yes.
Super premature question. If he runs, do we bring it back?
The shirt?
The shirt.
Oh. No, it's back now. It's back.
Oh, it is?
No, yeah,
I thought it was gone.
No, we did. I don't know why we did, because we're weird. We like banned it for like 6 months. We're like, we're not playing around with you. Okay, it's gone.
It's when we turned on Bernie.
Yeah. The shirt was banned from the show. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's back right now. Check it out on shoptyt.com. Okay. And you could also get one exclaiming that you are a very stable genius. Okay, so last night we had Texas primaries. John and I covered for you guys at length. And if you didn't hear the news, let me tell you all about it. Whoa, Nelly, let me tell you about the Texas primaries. So on the unsurprising side, we had Ted Cruz winning the Republican primary, of course, to run for Senate again in Texas. Beto O'Rourke, congressman from Texas, obviously, running against Ted Cruz in the Senate. He won comfortably, no problem there, okay? And Beto O'Rourke doesn't take any PAC money, so he's uncorrupted in that way, and he's very progressive. So that's good and interesting news on that front. But the real drama of the night was, are the Justice Democratic candidates going to win? Now, these are the really progressive candidates. Some of them, the Democratic Party, not only are opposed to, but actively, openly. Laura Moser, they did Oppo research on and then released it publicly. So it was the civil war within the Democratic Party had commenced last night. So who's going to win, the establishment guys or the Just Democrats who run with no corporate PAC money and sign on to a progressive platform? So a little bit of mixed results, but plenty of drama, and overall, I think very good results. Okay, but let me give you the good news, the bad news, and the ugly news. Okay, first, I'm going to tip our 40 to our fallen comrades here. So there were 7 Justice Democrats up last night. There's 52 overall in the country. In Texas' 2nd district, we had J. Darnell Jones. Now, if you make it into 2nd place and the 1st place person does not have 50%, in Texas you have a runoff. Now, Jones did get 2nd place, but unfortunately, the person in 1st squeaked out the majority there at 52.8%. So there will be no runoff. Todd Litton is the Democratic candidate in the 2nd district. So Darnell Jones lost. Now, a fan favorite, Derek Crow, is a person who's been involved in progressive politics for a long time. He was in the 21st district, and there we had a really crowded primary with a lot of vote getters. A lot of times it's just 1st and 2nd, but in this case, really spread out. And in that district, he had a really good showing, 23 points, but unfortunately came in 3rd. So there is a runoff there, but he will not make the runoff. So as you can see there, 23.1%, but you've got Mary Wilson and Joseph Kopser ahead of them. So they'll be doing a runoff in May. So those two Just Democrats lost. Well, now let me go to some of the winners. So you're getting a sense of the math here. If you're paying attention. All right, first we go to the most obvious one, the first Just Democrat to win the primary in the country. In history, in fact. Okay, I believe the Just Democrat caucus will be an incredibly strong, uncorrupted progressive caucus inside the House and the Senate. And the person who started it, when they look back in history, will be Vanessa Adia in Texas. She was in the 12th district. Now, we have to confess it was not a surprise that she won because she was running uncontested. Hence, Vanessa Adia won. And by the way, on our live coverage last night, tytnetwork.com/live on all the primary nights, all Tuesday nights, she came on afterwards and talked about there actually was a person in the race, but Vanessa's candidacy was so strong that person dropped out of the race, and that's why by the end she was unopposed. Now, another huge winner, and we had her on as well, Adrienne Bell in Texas' 14th district. She won overwhelmingly, 79.8%. So there will be no runoff. She is the winner, and she will go on to take on the Republican in the 14th district. And they better watch out. She told a great story. She's a second grade teacher. A lot of these folks, Vanessa's a teacher, Adrienne's a teacher, Rick Trevino is a teacher. And she told a story about how her second graders sent her a note saying, "Go, Miss Bell, go." So, and we nicknamed her the Liberty Bell. So she's coming, man. That 80%, and she talked about how her volunteers made a huge difference. 140 volunteers in that district. So people power actually working in a bit of a landslide in that case. Now, one that was really up in the air was Lindsey Fagan. She was in 26th district. Basically, two people in that race, and in that race we had first Lindsey leading with some percentage of the vote. Reporting, and then her falling into second place, and the person above her above 50%, because it's basically just two people, and it went back and forth all night long until Lindsey Fagan declared the winner. Oh my God. All right, 52.7%, beating out Will Fisher. She will take on the Republican in that district. So that's three winners clearly going forward now, and no runoffs in those. Now, let's get to the last two. The Laura Moser race is the one that most people were paying attention to because the DCCC attacked her in the middle of a primary, violating their own rules to not attack fellow Democrats. It was unprecedented, and she was in 6th place just a couple of weeks ago. Could she make it all the way up to the top 2 to get into the runoff? Well, it turns out, thank you very much, DCCC, she did in fact do that. She came in second, and a pretty close second at 24.3. There was a lot of people in that race. There was a former Goldman Sachs banker in that race who people thought was gonna come in second because of his money. Wrong, people power. Laura Moser, Just Democrat, backed by Our Revolution, backed by Progressive Change Campaign Committee as well, going to the runoff, okay? And then last night, John and I had a lot of fun tracking the Rick Trevino race. Now, Rick is another one of these guys, real person, teacher, got a bunch of volunteers, and he fought real hard. He started in 3rd place, which would have meant that he was not in the runoff. In fact, Gina Jones in that race was above 50% for a while, meaning there would be no runoff. But then all of a sudden, here comes Rick Trevino. He came in and jumped into second. Gina Jones fell out of 50%. She became less than 50%. And then all of a sudden, Rick Trevino pulls it out. He is now going into the runoff, and man, he went to 2nd place, 3rd place, 2nd place, 3rd place, and it was incredible drama last night. They haven't quite given him the check yet. They're probably going to check the votes a little bit more thoroughly, but he won by over 200 votes. And by the way, guys, get out there and vote in the primaries. Yeah. Look at how little these votes are, okay? He won by about 200 votes. So if you're out in the 23rd district in Texas and you went after it and you participated, you either volunteered for Rick, you donated to Rick, or you actually went out and voted for him, you made the difference. So he is likely going in the runoff. So, by the way, the links for all these folks to help them, donate, volunteer, website, will be down below in the description box on YouTube, in the comment section on Facebook, if you're watching this later online. And lastly, let's just do a tally here. We got 3 clear wins going up against Republicans. We got 2 people in the runoff. And by the way, in the runoff, once you knock out a lot of the establishment folks and a lot of people that are progressive or claim to be progressive, etc., you got 1 establishment person against 1 progressive. I think those odds favor us greatly. Okay, we'll find out if I'm right or wrong about that. But 2 people in the runoff and 2 people who lost. 3, 2, and 2. That is not bad for the first night of the Just Democrats. That is, I think, a very, very strong showing.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, look, when I asked the experts when the Justice Democrats first began, how many Justice Democrats do you think there will be in Congress in 2019? The answer I got was universally 0 or 1. Okay.
Oh, they gave you the 1.
Right. Some thought, I don't know, maybe 1 guy will squeak in, etc. Right. Now, first of all, there's already 2 incumbents, Ro Khanna and Raul Grijalva, so we're on the
joke's on you.
We're already in the over, okay? But these folks are coming, man. If you're not looking out for the Liberty Bell, you're making a mistake, okay? So, and of course they got to get past the runoffs, the ones that are in there, and then they got to beat the Republicans. But these districts are swinging, and Texas is turning more blue every day, and there's a lot more Democrats showing up and a lot more energy. So here come the Justice Democrats.
Yeah, and we saw, I mean, obviously there's a ton of analysis about what happened, and we saw that both with many Justice Democrats and then also outside of it, a lot of female candidates doing very well in Texas. It looks like, based on demographic trends and blah, 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 Texas is about to have its first ever Latina congresswoman. In fact, it looks like it's about to have 2. It seems crazy demographically that it never has before, but that's about to change as well. So one of many good changes coming to Texas thanks to this most recent round of primaries.
Yeah, and if you want to watch all of our coverage, tytnetwork.com/join, become a member, and you can get it anytime you want. If you want to see some of the interviews we did with the candidates, youtube.com/tytpolitics, or the main channel, youtube.com/tyt. All right, John, what do you got?
Okay, a little bit more on the primaries, just because I saw it this morning and it was fun. Not the most important thing in the world, but it was actually in the news quite a bit, so we're gonna talk about it. Last night, Beto O'Rourke won his statewide primary in Texas, and he will now be the Democrat that will go against Ted Cruz in the general election later on this year. But despite the fact that it's been less than a day where he's been the candidate, he has already been the target of an attack ad from Ted Cruz, which is funny for several reasons, especially one. We're gonna listen to it now and then break it down.
If you're gonna run in Texas, you can't be a liberal man, 'cause liberal thought is not the spirit of a Lone Star man.
I remember reading stories, liberal Robert wanted to fit in, so he changed his name to Beto and hit it with a grin. Beto wants those open borders and he wants to take our guns. Not a chance on earth he'll get a vote from millions of Texans.
If you're gonna run in Texas, you can't be a liberal man.
I'm Ted Cruz and I approve this message.
Okay. All right, I love that, man. I read about the ad. I did not hear it until we just played it live for you guys. And first of all, the country song was hilarious. I'm greatly amused by it. We'll break down the facts in a second. But to me, I don't know if you got the same thing that I did out of it. His weenie voice at the end.
Oh no, JR mentioned that earlier. It's like, it's the terrible, cringeworthy, like parody of country, and then, and I approve this message.
Yeah, I mean, it was so discordant, it was jarring. It was like one of those records like, right?
Yeah, it's like, you know what? You're listening along, you know what? You're in Texas, you're conservative. I do want a strong man. Then Ted Cruz's voice, shit, I gotta vote for Beto.
It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna vote against the liberals. You vote for me, I'm Ted Cruz.
But anyway, his voice is funny. That's not the biggest issue there. I mean, trying to take the entire race and make it about the fact that he wants open borders and he's gonna take all your guns. I don't believe that Beto O'Rourke has come out in favor of those two things necessarily. Maybe do your own research. But the part that I liked the most was They say he remembers, whoever the Clint Eastwood wannabe in there, remembers reading stories about little Robert who wanted to fit in, so he changed his name to Beto and hit it with a grin, which is amazing on so many different levels. So apparently, look, he grew up in El Paso. This is a sort of traditional Spanish nickname for Robert. I haven't checked the numbers. I'm gonna guess there are some people that speak Spanish in the El Paso area. So perhaps it's not crazy that you could end up with that sort of nickname there. But that's not the big issue. The big issue is that this is an ad being endorsed by Ted Cruz. Sorry, his name isn't actually Ted Cruz. It's Rafael Edward Cruz.
Yeah.
So he took Edward and shortened it to Ted, and then attacks Robert, changed it to Beto.
He said,
and my head explodes.
He said, real Texans don't have nicknames. You have a nickname.
And it's not even your name's nickname, it's your middle name's nickname. That's gotta be worse through weird nickname math.
So look, part of what he's implying there is that he changed it to Beto to try to get Latino votes, okay, that he's a pandering politician. So this is the old Trump playbook of calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, etc. Nice racial undertones, plus it makes him seem like a pandering politician, so it's not like we're unaware of it. But then ironically, Ted Cruz with the first name Rafael panders in the opposite direction and goes, what? No, I'm Ted. Hey, everybody, I'm Ted. I'm not Rafael. That sounds a little too Latino. Okay, I'm one of you guys. Okay, I'm Ted.
Although I think even Rafael Edward Cruz realizes that now, demographically and all that, like I think he's willing to accept the name, and you're going to see that because he was asked about this ad and how obviously hypocritical it was, and so we're going to break that down after this.
Go after Beto for his name. Beto is obviously a nickname. Why? One, you didn't like that dirty pool when you were running for president and the president called you Lion Ted. You didn't like that kind of tactic. And look, your name is Rafael. You go by Ted, your middle name is Edward. That's an anglicized version of it. He went the other way and has a more ethnic version of his name. Why go after it? You're both doing the same thing.
Well, listen, you're absolutely right. My name is Rafael Edward Cruz. I am the son of my father, Rafael Cruz, an immigrant from Cuba who came to Texas with nothing and had $100 in his underwear, couldn't speak English, washed dishes, making 50 cents an hour.
In the future, when you tell that story, he came here with $100. That's it. That's all you have to say. We don't need to know where it was.
You know what that reminded me of? The Christopher Walken scene in True Romance.
Now, I was thinking of in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, no, I think it's in True Romance. He had $100 rolled up in his ass. That's what he came in. Remember the ring, right?
It was the watch.
The watch. Yeah, it's Pulp Fiction.
There was a lot of stuff rolled up and put in there. He was like a human briefcase. But anyway, yeah, and look, to go back to the ad, I get that he's gonna talk about his background and everything, and I love that JR zoomed in on his face when he's smiling like that. Like if he tries to make this about appealing to some sort of stereotypical traditional version of Texas masculinity, obviously that is not going to be something that Ted Cruz is gonna end up winning. I lived in Texas for more than 4 years, or more than 5 years. There's nothing about Ted Cruz that screams conservative Texan.
One thing on the pandering still though, Jake, you talked about he pandered the opposite direction towards the white Texan vote because I'm so Ted and not Rafael. Then when he gets the opportunity to answer why he did it with this ad, he brings up his immigrant father from Cuba. I'm one of the good Latinos, right? I'm one of the good guys. My father came in as one of those good immigrants, not one of those dirty ones that comes in and steals all your stuff and becomes a criminal. Yeah, I'll admit to being a Latino when it comes to that.
Yeah.
When it comes to anything else, I'm a good old white boy from Texas. He plays both sides.
Oh, JR, I didn't notice that. Damn it, that's such a good point.
That was good.
Because that's his way of saying, remember, I'm not Mexican. Oh, he's such a bad guy.
Yeah, and then the overall idea of the song, though, aside from the name, is it's just if you're gonna run in Texas, you can't be a liberal, man, because that's not the spirit of us. I love that it's like saying to all the conservatives listening to it, no, you will think exactly the way we say you should think. You will never change ever. But maybe that will even work. But the idea that simply calling someone a liberal disqualifies them. And last night he attacked Beto O'Rourke as he called him a left-wing liberal, I think he called him, as if that's case closed, it's done. It's not the 90s anymore. It's not the 80s where for whatever reason, people on the left were supposed to be scared of the labels. The country was never what you think it is now, and it certainly isn't today. People have evolved Their values have changed. People aren't scared of that. If anything, liberal is sort of a little bit outdated now for the most part. But that's just a ridiculous way to attempt to disqualify someone that probably represents the values of Texas far better than you ever will.
Okay, so now let's go to the heart of the question here. Did Beto O'Rourke make up the name later to pander as a politician? Because look, some politicians do it, right? Remember, Ted Cruz picked a vice presidential nominee, Carly Fiorina, near the end of the Republican primaries in 2016. You remember what she had done? Even though she'd gone to Stanford, they were in the Iowa caucus, and Iowa and Stanford, I think, were playing in a bowl game, and she's like, "Well, I'm a Stanford alum, and normally I'd be in favor of Stanford, but go Iowa." Everybody was like, "Okay." I mean, you want to talk about pandering politician? So, did Beto make it up later in life? Well, we have a picture that he tweeted out, graphic 27. Let's take a look at that. Now, this appears to be pretty good evidence. That's him on the right there as a child with a shirt that says Beto.
This is only proof that George Soros funded time travel technology to get radical leftists into office.
Everybody knows Soros invented the hot tub time machine. And look, normally progressives have usually said things are not fair and then just left it at that. Oh, that's unfair to attack his name. I'm not in that camp. I'm in the counterattack camp. Okay, so Ted Cruz, you frickin' weenie, you're gonna talk about how somebody's not a real man in Texas? I'd like to show you a picture of a person that has those issues in spades. Let me see that, Jesus. Yeah, that guy, that guy. If I was Beto O'Rourke, and maybe if I'm not even Beto O'Rourke, maybe I do him a solid and I run this ad for him anyway. Here's a meme that should be going around the internet. Let's see the next picture. Yeah, not a man. When someone insults your wife and your dad and basically spits in your face and says, "What are you gonna do about it, Raphael?" and you phone bank for him like a broken man, don't go around questioning anybody else's masculinity. I could say worse, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
I wanna see that picture everywhere.
Yeah, well, if we have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Beto O'Rourke will beat Ted Cruz. And then at the end, I hope on election night, he says, "Hey, Ted, say my name."
This is something I was talking about in the production meeting. It's crazy, it would never work. I also think, in fact, I not only predicted that Beto O'Rourke would win, I called it last night, and he won. But anyway, let's say something terrible happens, he doesn't win. I think in a year or two, I might have to move back to Texas and run against Ted Cruz. Oh God, I would love to just have even one of the suicidal campaigns where I just go in there just to take him down with me in a fiery fury. I despise that little weenie because in a different way than Donald Trump, I think people should be able to see through Donald Trump's stupidity and all of that, and the braggadocio, all that. But with Ted Cruz, he is too oily to still be able to be a politician in this age of things being recorded in audio and in video and people being able to easily see who this person is, to listen to them talk. Maybe he could have skated through back in the 1880s or something like that. But we have evolved past people like Ted Cruz still holding office. And so one way or another, we need to get him out of there.
Yeah, luckily, I think you're gonna be with the Young Turks in a couple of years because I think Beto's gonna beat him.
That's probably easier for me.
Okay, all right, we gotta take a quick break. When we come back, now, Trump has brought in a whole bunch of people to destroy the departments that they had. Now, in the case of Ben Carson, the housing and urban development often helps minorities. So they brought in a minority. I wonder it was to do what? Well, let's find out when we come back. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like physically?
Yeah. Okay. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, "Cenk, you've got to stop working out."
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like, you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I'm reading some of the comments on a YouTube video I did. What's a cuck? Go. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you guys. Lots of wonderful tweets here. Eclectic Mistralania says 5 out of 7 Justice Dems last night either won or are going to a runoff. I call that a huge success for progressives and the Justice Democrats for the first night of the primaries. I agree with you, man. 5 out of 7 is amazing. Amazing when no one thought that any of them were going to win. Unregistered Chicano says, I got my tickets to see Bernie speak in San Antonio Friday night. That sounds wonderful. By the way, March 19th, mark your calendar. That's a big week. March 19th, Bernie's going to do another town hall that we're going to cover right here on the Young Turks. March 20th is the Illinois primary. That's a gigantic one. Daniel Biss running for governor there. A lot of people are excited about him. And then March 21st is my birthday. That is not a programming note. I just wanted to mention it. Okay.
What's the town hall on? Is it a general thing or topic?
No, there's a topic, but way to forget. Okay, thanks for calling me out while I forget. That's 2 shows in a row. I forgot McMaster last night. Anyway, I'll get that to you guys in the next segment. Danger Carlos Danger says, hey, look, 2 of my least favorite things, country music and Ted Cruz. Rita Ann says, why do Republicans get away with using liberal like a dirty word, but we don't hear Democratic candidates using conservative that way? It's a great, great point. I actually think conservative is a terrible word. And it means opposed to change. No, I'm going to keep everything the same. Well, that's your why don't you declare that you are the loser of history because change is inevitable? So people trying to hang on to the past, that's I mean, nobody should want to be called conservative, but it's part of the democratic surrender that they have said, agreed that liberal is not something they want to be described as. They're barely beginning to fight back on that now.
Totally.
Let alone smearing conservative, which you should, and it's politics. For God's sake, get in the game, right?
Yeah, even a lot of conservatives know that they don't want to be called conservatives, so they go by classic liberal.
At least a couple of them. And finally, look, I'm just reporting the tweet here. Disney Princess writes in, okay, already hold, that's not even the controversial part. I'm quoting here, I'm a flaming homo and I think I'm more masculine than Ted Cruz. And let me just disagree in part there, because being gay or straight doesn't have to do anything to do with masculinity. It's, do you stand up for yourself? Do you have backbone? Are you? And some people say, well, no, it's not fair to characterize masculinity that way. Okay, fine, we can have a disagreement over that. But that is how it's classically described. And that has nothing to do with being gay or straight. That has to do whether you've got spine or you don't, right? And Cruz is jello.
That part I will 100% agree with.
Yes.
He is jello. Well, I would say melted candle wax, but similar.
Similar. Okay, all right, what's next?
Okay, another politician we'll have a problem with. Fresh off of its recent spending scandal, Ben Carson's Department of Housing and Urban Development finds itself back in the news, and this time it's over honestly a pretty honest admission of a change to the core mission of that department. So first, we're gonna read you what for a long time their mission statement has said for, again, Department of Housing and Urban Development. HUD's mission is to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and quality, affordable homes for all. HUD is working to strengthen the housing market to bolster the economy and protect consumers, meet the need for quality, affordable rental homes, utilize housing as a platform for improving quality of life, build inclusive and sustainable communities free from discrimination, and transform the way HUD does business. So I think a lot of people can look at that mission statement and say, yes, that is exactly what one area of the government should be working on. That is incredibly important, especially when you realize, when you read history, that when it comes to institutionalized racism, housing policy was a gigantic area where that institutionalized racism took place. And that's why we needed a government department like HUD to help to fight back against that. Unfortunately, that's its old mission statement. They just rolled out their new one, and here it is. HUD's mission is to ensure Americans have access to fair, affordable housing and opportunities to achieve self-sufficiency, thereby strengthening our communities and nation. Hashtag bootstraps. So you'll notice there, nothing about inclusivity, freedom from discrimination, any of that stuff that really references the historic mission of HUD. Instead, it is, hey, you can afford your housing and hopefully you'll be able to take care of yourself and make the community better, because we're certainly not gonna take care of you.
Yeah, there's only one reason why you take that verbiage out. Later, a spokesperson for Carson's HUD said, well, no, it's, we definitely believe in inclusion and being against discrimination. Then why did you take it out of your mission statement? If you definitely believe it, why not just leave it in there? Because it's such a proactive move to take it out of the mission statement. If you're writing a new one from scratch, like, oh, hey, we're starting this new cabinet position, housing and urban development, what should be the mission statement? And you didn't put that in there, I don't think people flip out. Like, some people would make an argument, and I might make an argument that you should have that in there, right? But if you say, hey, you know what, look, this is the core mission, but okay, that's debatable. But you go out of your way to take discrimination out of the mission statement, then yeah, we get to question whether you actually want to stop discrimination or not. So there's two elements, two parts to this. One is, if you want to make sure that people can discriminate in housing, well, what are you going to do if you're the Trump administration? It's Trump 101, it's conservative 101. You're going to get a minority, and you're going to get him to remove the language about discrimination. So that if anyone says, hey, wait a minute, I thought this was to help, different communities in the country, you say, oh, you can't say it, Ben Carson's black, we win, Ben Carson's black, right? I've seen this trick a billion times on Fox News.
Yeah.
All right, Sean Hannity will bring on now 4 black people to yell at other black people. Okay, go, proceed, right? Like, Are you on this planet? Have you been paying attention to what's going on? Like, this is not a cute little trick where we like, and then what, are liberals supposed to be like, oh, he's black, so we can't say anything. Okay, whatever Ben Carson says. No, I think you got the wrong liberal, son. So, and then secondly, does Ben Carson actively want to discriminate against African Americans or Latinos? I don't know. But there is one a group that I know that he wants to discriminate against, and that's what might actually be driving this, and that's the LGBTQ community. And so he has spoken out against them all the time. And by the way, no one questions Ben Carson's fundamentalism. He is a Seventh-day Adventist and a fundamentalist one at that. And so they have interesting thoughts. You might want to look into it. And if you say, hey, can't discriminate against all Seventh-day Adventists, I'd be the first one on your side, and you shouldn't make assumptions. But Ben Carson has been vocal about his fundamentalist beliefs in that religion. And part of that is saying that gay people in America should not have the same rights as straight people. Yeah. Well, when you're a cabinet official in charge of non-discrimination in housing, and then you take out the words non-discrimination and you say, yeah, it's okay to discriminate, and you're on the record as being pro-discrimination, at least in regards to that community, that's deeply problematic.
Yeah, you can't really blame him for the fundamentalism though. I mean, an angel taught him chemistry. At that point, you pretty much have to believe for the rest of your life. Look it up, it's a true story, he told it. Yeah.
And I gotta just, if you don't know that story, I gotta tell it to you in 30 seconds because it shows you that we have a lunatic that's a cabinet member here. And a person who's like a sick panderer. He has no moral character, okay? He actually did well in school. He became a well-respected doctor. But that didn't play well for his conservative base, who he sells books to and gets paid to give speeches to, gets paid a lot of money to give speeches to. So he had to pretend that he was a dumb black man. Like he said, chemistry, I didn't know it at all, and I couldn't study it, and I was lazy. But I fell asleep. In his story, look it up, in his story, he falls asleep, and an angel comes to him and teaches him chemistry in his sleep. Because a black man can't be smart enough to know chemistry, an angel had to give it to him. Oh, and the conservative right-wing audience, they eat that story up. Look at the dumb black guy who found Jesus and then became better. Here's another $10,000, another $20,000, Ben. Tell me that BS story again. He's either a lunatic who thinks angels come and talk to him in the middle of the night, or he's a sick, pandering, immoral character. The answer, by the way, might be both.
Well, I mean, also, let's not forget, he's also a dangerous, violent black man from his core. True. All those things that he's supposed to heap on. Remember, was it his mother? Someone he wanted to attack.
Yeah, he was gonna hit his mother with a hammer.
So he's naturally a violent, stupid black person who eventually found God. I don't know if he found God before that, but the angel helped him study, and I'm not sure it brought him out of his violent nature.
Yeah, no, it was Jesus in a bathroom. I remember the whole story. And then you remember the famous story where he tried to stab a friend with a knife, but it hit his belt buckle and the knife broke. What a really, you went like this. It happened to hit just the right belt buckle and break. By the way, they asked his friend, they asked all his friends, did that story ever happen? Did he ever try to stab someone, which is a significant crime that, and he said he did it in a school. Did he get suspended in school or out of school suspension? Nothing, it's totally made up because Ben Carson is deeply immoral and goes around pandering to white people who happen to be right wing, not all white people. Of course, the right wing love those BS stories. So then they go, hey, who should destroy housing and urban development? We got the perfect guy. Ben Carson, come on in. Come in here and make sure that we can discriminate and do whatever the hell we want to these folks. Remember, that's what we pay you for, Ben. One last thing.
To wrap up this 30 seconds
go ahead.
of explaining this story. Well, you don't know, but black folks have terrible aim. So he hit right at the belt buckle. It's another stereotype.
I think an angel lightly nudged the knife into the belt buckle.
Okay, and then finally on this story, he says that's okay. He actually does not want to help poor people that much because if he doesn't want them getting used to good things in life, because that'll sap their energy from being able to work harder. Now, I don't know if you remember, just about a week ago, Ben Carson got in trouble for ordering a new $31,000 dining table in his office. Now, Ben, you're on the government dole there. You literally take government money And I don't want you to get too comfortable in that big government office. Well, I don't know why you got that dining table that looks so nice now. Shouldn't you just make sure that you just eat on the whole table so you don't get too used to the big government money and want to settle in? Seems a little hypocritical.
Yeah. Okay. Are we moving on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we broke him enough.
You pointed out that he went and removed it. He didn't have to. He just chose to remove it. And some people might say, "Why are you focusing so much on that?" Imagine if you're about to get married and you say, "Baby, I'm going to do my own vows." Actually, they're mostly the same vows, except I'm removing till death do us part. It's going to be a big deal. And he chose to do it. They did it in the NSA as well. They did it also in one of the immigration agencies. And they're like, it's not just in the policies, but they want to make sure that you know that the government departments that were put into place to actually help regular people, there aren't nearly enough, but there are some that they're perverting them and turning them against their core missions.
I like better. Honey, I'm just going to take out to love and to hold. I hope you don't mind. No, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. No, I'm going to do all the other stuff. Love. There is your bridesmaid, Nancy. Okay, all right.
Okay, moving on. A few months back, Donald Trump and the GOP decided to take about $1.5 trillion that were going to be going into government programs to actually do things for Americans. And they took that money and they decided to give it to the 1% and extremely large, powerful corporations. And so they did that, and now we know what those corporations are doing with that money. This is something we've talked about multiple times on the show, but we actually have a response to it from the Democrats that's pretty interesting. So what they want to do, now that we know that that money is just going to stock buybacks and things like that, the Democrats are proposing a better plan for it. They have this proposal. It would put $1 trillion into a wide range of infrastructure needs, including $140 billion for roads and bridges, $115 billion for water and sewer infrastructure, and $50 billion to rebuild schools. Now what's interesting is that is not $1 trillion that, we're gonna debate and we're gonna figure out somewhere we're gonna find that money from. No, they already know where they're gonna get the money from. The spending would be offset by clawing back 2/3 of the revenue lost in the Republican tax bill by reinstating a top income tax rate of 39.6%, restoring the individual alternative minimum tax, reversing cuts to the estate tax, and raising the corporate income tax from 21% back to 25%. And that money would then, instead of just going to stock buybacks, would be put into actually rebuilding parts of this country that desperately need it.
Okay, now let me tell you one terrible part of that proposal and then give them a world of credit for actually doing something pretty good. So let me explain. If you notice, they said move the corporate tax rate from 21 to 25%. Wait a minute. It wasn't 25%, it was 35%.
Yeah.
So like Barack Obama did with George Bush's tax cuts, this would actually enshrine gigantic tax cuts for corporations forever. Because if the Democrats do this, and they won't be able to do it today, but if they did do this, congratulations corporations, you got a massive tax cut and no one will ever fight it. The Republicans are the ones who did it, Democrats would be the ones that enshrined it, okay? So I wanna be absolutely clear about that. Given that, this is as good as you could possibly expect from these current Democrats. And I'm actually weirdly proud of them, okay? Because now look, I would do more and I would claw back to 35% and et cetera, et cetera. In fact, I'd go, oh, you wanna be cute? I'll go to 40%, okay, but that's me. But for these guys, it's pretty good, and why is it pretty good? Number one, they're only taking back the tax cuts from the rich, so that plays really, really well. Secondly, what they do is they set up a situation where they go, now America, what would you like? Would you like to create jobs as we rebuild the infrastructure of the country? You get the bridges, you get the roads, et cetera. And by the way, the energy development there would power changes which creates even more jobs. There's 260,000 solar jobs in the country. This would help raise that number significantly. And that way you don't have to pay tolls the rest of your life to a private corporation. That's Trump's plan. So you get a win in the infrastructure, you get a win in helping the economy, and you get a win in creating more jobs. And the only thing we're taking away is tax cuts for the rich and for corporations. That's really good. That's excellent politics.
And on top of it, it also has $40 billion to build high-speed internet connections in rural areas, to help to sell it to rural areas of the country, and $80 billion to upgrade the country's energy grid, which is obviously vulnerable to both terrorist attack and threats in war. So you get the national security component as well. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can defend it, and you get to go to the public and say, okay, you can have one or two things. The Republicans are saying we're gonna just shower the richest people in the country with a bunch of money, and hopefully they will use some of it to produce jobs, or we can produce jobs with the money directly, not if the rich are okay with it, we just do it. I think that that's a far better plan.
And so policy-wise, it's pretty much as good as this current Democratic Party, Democratic Senate can do. So I'll take it. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. We'll do better later, okay? And that's policy-wise. And then politics-wise, it's great politics. And in fact, New York Times did a really interesting article. They went and talked to the Trump supporters about their tax cuts. And they said, yeah, we got them. And it's about $30 on an average paycheck. And look, you can say, oh, New York Times, if you're a right winger, you don't believe them. But they're real human beings that they talk to. They didn't make it up.
Yeah.
And you could say it's anecdotal, and that's fair. But everyone they talked to was like, it's lunch money. It's good, I'll take it. And they're Trump supporters, right? They're like,
yeah,
look, it's not gonna change my life. Some of them are like, I'll take it. And so I guess I'm happy I voted for Trump. Some of them are like, something better than this, right? But overall, they're not overwhelmed by it, right? And if you said to them, hey guys, you got lunch money, the top 1% on average got over a $50,000 tax break, okay? Now, you're gonna get to keep your money, but we're gonna take that $50,000 and create jobs with it. That is excellent politics. That will definitely work. In fact, the Republicans right now, according to the National Journal, are running ads in the special election in the 18th district of Pennsylvania that's happening right now. And they're going about, hey, we cut taxes, isn't that wonderful? And they're reporting back, panic. It's not working. It's not moving the needle at all. Normally, what do they do with all the money in politics, all the corruption? They pour it into TV ads and they're like, we're awesome, we gave you tax cuts. And 18th district, which is largely Republican, going, nah. So if you unveil this and they put some real muscle behind this is actually a winning strategy.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. We got a winning strategy from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and it's so important that we cover this sort of thing. I mean, we've been saying for how long, and we'll continue to say, the Democrats have got to actually stand for something. They have to propose actual plans. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that on the mainstream media, you're probably not gonna see any coverage of this. But we said we want plans, so we're actually covering the plans. We're being consistent. And really, we don't have time to cover it, unfortunately, but I did think it was interesting. Cory Booker, for all of his problems, and make sure that he actually does it, but he proposed, did you see the Worker Dividend Act?
No, I didn't.
So I had never heard of this before, but because this big stock buyback thing is going on, where a huge percentage of the money that these corporations are getting back from the tax cuts, they're just buying their own stock, which is great for people who own a ton of stocks, but unfortunately for the lowest half of American wage earners, that's not at all. What he would propose is, however much money they spend on stock buybacks, they also have to put into wage improvements for the workers at the corporation.
I love it. I love the Republicans having to vote no on that. So, and by the way, look at this. In local politics, historically, money has made all the difference. 95% of the time, the person with more money wins. That's why we want to and have to get money out of politics. But at the presidential level, in the last couple of cycles, we have seen that money doesn't matter that much because of billions of dollars in free media. It's ironically about the only race in the country where money doesn't matter as much, okay? Now, there's table stakes. You have to have a certain amount of money to be taken seriously and have the media cover you. But once you're past that, you actually have to appeal to voters. There's too big a spotlight. And that has created a wonderful situation where previously considered solidly establishment senators like Cory Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand are competing with one another to be more and more progressive and put these progressive policy positions forward. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want.
And by the way, obviously you have to keep watching, because it's one thing to propose this, it's another to see what he does if he ever has more power. Will he actually present it? Will he fight for it? But there's actually another way you can check in on him. So he obviously, he's trying to appeal, he's trying to present himself as a big progressive. Well, we've got this Wall Street deregulation bill going on right now. Now, it has 12 Democratic co-sponsors, but oddly enough, Cory Booker, who Wall Street is his big flaw historically, is not one of those co-sponsors. But you have to check for all the votes and see, maybe he doesn't co-sponsor, maybe in the end he supports it. We'll see.
Yeah, no, there's too big a spotlight. He's not going to support it.
Good.
Yeah.
Keep the spotlight on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we got to take a break here. When we come back, we did it again. Damn, Daniel, you did it again. So Nomiki Konst breaks the story for the Young Turks that has New York media buzzing. Potential fight between Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo. Don't miss it. We'll give it to you when we come back. We are actually the longest running daily stream on the planet. Later tonight, we start a revolution. Yes, another one.
I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Too strong.
You're not answering the question. Answer the question.
No one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States of America.
Go, engage, fire.
Congrats to the Young Turks. They actually won a Streamy Award tonight.
We'd like to thank Donald Trump, obviously.
We just crossed 7.6 billion views.
Revolution won't be televised. Hello, Internet.
I am the least anti-Semitic person that you've ever seen. I think there's blame on both sides.
Oh, these politicians, they're the worst.
They had these beautiful soft towels.
It's just so wrong.
They took your wealth and redistributed it to them.
The government's robbing you, and they're distracting you with fucking nonsense.
Fake news, the enemy of the people. Nobody knew that healthcare could be so complicated.
I can't speak as dumb as he understands.
The market will be destroyed by this plan, and 45 million people will be left without insurance.
They will be met with fire and fury. We've just launched 59 missiles.
MSNBC shows the bombs taking off, and Al Jazeera shows you when they land.
The profiling and the Muslim bans have begun.
Today, my father and brother await deportation.
Horrific act of violence in Charlottesville. I want you to see what hate looks like in America.
What a sick country we live in.
It's time to get up and fight back.
It's against Donald Trump.
Women's marches take over more than 500 cities across the United States.
Immigrants throughout the United States who protest. I don't think they're peasants. I actually think that they enrich this country with their culture.
I don't want a resistance. I want a revolution.
History is not on your side.
Your fundamental principle is flawed.
This is outrageous. It's unethical. It's bad government. And frankly, it's fucking, corruption.
We work together as a community and we stand up for each other.
A total solar eclipse, oh my God.
Climate change is my #1 issue, and to be able to help amplify the message and research of these workers is like a dream come true.
Colin Kaepernick chose to sit during the national anthem to protest police violence against African Americans. This has sparked a new movement.
More and more women are sharing their stories of sexual assault.
It's happening right in front of our eyes as the culture is shifting.
We have to speak up ourselves, and we have to create movements ourselves.
To see it unfolding in real time as women stand up together collectively and go no more.
So many women came out of that women's march and said, I'm running for office.
You want to talk about the revolution? Here it is. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
TYT.
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 Young Turks.
You do have the power to change people, you do. I hope one day we can all learn to live together.
Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you. Comrade Question says, yay, Democrats, doing the bare minimum and not even getting back to the previous status quo, but a situation slightly worse than it previously was. Now, look, that's true, and that's why I said getting back to 25%, don't let them slide on that, and that's terrible. And I see that trick, I'm not blind to that trick.
And that's And that's why you do not allow the Republicans to get in office, take us way, way, way back, and then we have to fight just to get back to where we were. That's why that's a terrible idea.
But also, the Democrats, of course, with the wrong strategy overall on a macro level, which is if they take 10 yards, you should ask for 20 yards back instead of 5 yards back, right? So, but anyway, to be fair to the Democrats, one, it's good political strategy. Two, it's as far as I've ever seen them go. And three, you actually are getting something, and that's $1 trillion in infrastructure and a lot of jobs. So let's be fair. All right, Disney Princess is back, and he wrote, I've had angels come talk to me at night, but I was on LSD. Maybe that's what happened. All right, now, serious note here. Michael McAllister wrote in on YouTube Super Chat, and unfortunately, this is the first time that I found out about it because we're live on the air here. But thank you for writing in, Michael. It says, 3 injured in Huffman High School shooting, 1 student has died. And so then I saw that YouTube Super Chat comment during the break. And then I wanted to ask John, what do we got? What's the update on it?
Yeah, so the way that it's being described, and the updates they're literally coming in every few minutes, is that they are saying that a student brought in a gun, showed it off to what's being described as a few female students, it seems. The gun discharged. It's being described so far, at least, as an accident. However, it did strike multiple students. 1 died. Birmingham City School System put out a statement that says 2 students were involved in a shooting during dismissal today at Hoffman High School. The school was placed on a brief lockdown and police were called to the scene. Students have been released and police are actively investigating the circumstances surrounding the shooting.
So there's this part of the story that doesn't seem to make much sense, but it just happened, so you'll always get a little bit of reporting that's at least a little off in the beginning. If it was an accidental discharge, why did it hit several people? But it might not have.
It can also penetrate.
Yes, of course it's possible. So we'll see. But that's not important. What's important is, let's take the best case scenario, which is that it's not a purposeful school shooting, that he was just showing it off and it went off, which is exactly what we warned you about.
Yeah.
We said, look, right now Florida passed a law where they're going to arm 37,000 teachers. None of them are going to accidentally discharge their firearm in a school. Yes, they are. Here, I'll give you stats about it. In a recent year, Japan had 13 people die from guns. Overall, homicides, suicides, accidents, 13. Now, granted, they're 1/3 of our size population-wise, okay? So triple it and call it 39, okay? We had, in that same year in America, 505 people die from just gun accidents. There was tens of thousands who died from homicides and suicides by gun, but 505 just by accident from guns. And that happens every year. You know why? Because there's guns everywhere. And now when you say, let's bring the guns into the schools, the accidents will happen in the schools and little kids will die. And unfortunately, it looks like that's exactly what happened here.
Exactly.
Can't imagine the teacher running out when they hear this kid, his gun accidentally go off. Where now the teacher's like, oh, there's a gunfire.
That's such a great point. I hadn't thought about that. And if you arm the teachers and then they rush out and they're not cops, they're teachers, and then they start shooting, oh, for Christ's sake.
And then that teacher has to decide in an instant, is this an accident? Is he pretending it's an accident? Did he just shoot somebody? And they have to decide. And you have told the teachers it is now your obligation to make life or death decisions about your students. Will you murder your students or will you not? You now need to do that. And we're gonna give you a couple of hours of training to help you figure it out.
We're turning all our schools into the OK Corral. It's insanity. Wow. Okay, all right, let's do the next thing.
Okay, gonna really mix it up here. Will there be a primary challenger for New York's Governor Cuomo? We don't know for sure yet, but we are getting some interesting insight into the possibility. And this is coming from our TYT Politics reporter, Nimiki Konst, who got to spend a day with Bill de Blasio of New York City. And he had something interesting to say about it. Let's listen.
What if someone decided they were going to run against him and they were progressive? What would you do?
I think there will be a Democratic primary. I've always thought there'd be a Democratic primary, and I think it'll be spirited because there's a lot of issues that have to be discussed.
It's early.
Yeah, it's early still in the scheme of things. No, I'm just saying I don't think this is over. I think inevitably there will be a progressive challenge because of what's going on in the country, what's going on in the party, and what's going on in the state. And I think a lot of people want to ask some tough questions and want there to be that debate. I believe there will be a debate over the future of the party in the state. And I don't think the fact that it's been quiet up to now means that's all there is to it.
Okay, so that wound up being huge news in New York, and great work by Nomiki Konst. She's actually the first reporter we hired when we did the investigative reporter fundraising powered by our audience. And so New York Post has now picked it up, talked about it, many other outlets have, and in fact, Andrew Cuomo was asked about it in a press conference, and he already had to react to it, and they asked him, now look, all of a sudden de Blasio for the first time is saying that you likely will get a primary challenger. How do you feel about that? And do you think that perhaps de Blasio is behind Cynthia Nixon considering a run? She's an actress and a progressive activist and has recently spoken out against Cuomo. We'll get to that in a second. And Cuomo responded, I think it was probably either the mayor of New York or Vladimir Putin, and then chuckled, according to the New York Times. So, okay, nice little Putin reference there. But look, Nomiki asked, we got an answer, and de Blasio does not hide the fact that they don't agree. And so it appears that he's looking forward to a primary challenger for Cuomo. And by the way, Nomiki's whole interview with him is going to be up in a series form on youtube.com/TYTpolitics.
Yeah. You want to go to a little bit more of it?
Yes.
Okay, so they're going to widen it a little bit about the state of the party and the sorts of candidates that they might begin nominating in the next go-around, the next presidential election. You'll see that in this clip.
I think progressives are ascendant in the Democratic Party. I fundamentally believe the Democratic Party will nominate a progressive for president. The energy is all with the progressive side of the party. The folks who are running, the folks who are volunteering, the people who are signing up to vote, it's all coming from one place. The notion of the party as the amorphous thing it was allowed to be for so long, that's dying quickly. And I think that's very, very healthy. But I think everyone is going to be held to that standard. So anyone who thinks they can run in 2020 as a moderate or they can avoid definition is sorely mistaken.
So I think that's relevant for New York. He's not just saying that in a vacuum. He's saying all the energy is on the progressive side. Wink, wink, somebody might want to run as a progressive against Cuomo. But also very relevant at the national level. And I think his assessment of that is exactly right. I don't think, some might say that it's self-serving because he's on the progressive side, but I don't think so. And I think he has correctly assessed that's where all the energy is. I recently talked to a congressional candidate. They actually have a lot of Obama volunteers and a lot of Bernie volunteers. And the Obama volunteers won't do anything because they're saying they're going to wait to see if he has a better chance of winning. Whereas the Bernie volunteers are already in the streets. They're like, where do we go? Where do we go? What doors do we knock on? Who do we call? So
but that doesn't make it, you know how you can improve his chances? By doing something.
I know, but so when they say things like energy, that is part of what they mean by that. And it's real. People are energized, they want to go tell other people about it, they want to volunteer, they want to do grassroots efforts. And eventually vote. Those guys are more energized to show up in primaries and in the 2020 election. So I think de Blasio is exactly right there. By the way, that portion of the interview in its entirety will be in a link down below in YouTube in the description box and comment section on Facebook. And then the whole series will be on TYT Politics. But one more video for you guys. If you don't remember Cynthia Nixon talking about Cuomo and why now they're asking about Nixon in their press conference with Cuomo, here's what she had to say about it back then.
Are you going to run for governor?
Look at one of us directly in the eye if you are. I'll take that. I got it. We're good.
I think there are a lot of people who would like me to run. And I think for a variety of reasons, but I think the number one is education. And Governor Cuomo likes to say that, we spend more per pupil than any other state, and that is actually true. But the only reason that is true is because we spend so much on the kids in our wealthiest districts, and so that evens out. And not only me, parents all across New York State. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, and there she said, people have encouraged me to run now based on partly based on Nomi's reporting speculation going all the way to the governor that de Blasio is one of the people encouraging her. They are friends, they are allies. I don't think that necessarily proves the case, but there are a lot of people who would like Andrew Cuomo primaried by a progressive, so de Blasio is not alone in that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're out of time, guys. When we come back, Anna's gonna come and we got a number of really important stories. Really interesting story about how somebody turned on Al-Qaeda and gave us huge evidence that allowed us to take out a lot of their leadership. And then of course we screwed them. Okay, but speaking of screwing people, the Stormy Daniels story is now really important. It went from goofy, who cares, he slept with a porn star, to a couple of potentially devastating legal implications and violations. So let's talk about that and see what kind of trouble Cohen, the lawyer for Trump, and Trump himself might be in when we come back.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Hi, Aaron. I'm confused. Is it Cenk Uygur or Cenk Uygur? Go. Look, we're doing interviews over there at youtube.com/TYT interviews, and we've done some amazing ones recently. So now, of course, you know the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Why not back him during the 2016 primaries? Why be a Democrat at all?
And we're in a time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history in 2017. Right.
Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. One quick tweet, morning my son says, the sad thing is Democrats don't even ask for the 5 yards back. They may puff their chest to the media like they will, but when they get into quote unquote negotiations, they tuck their tails while agreeing with the Republicans they should lose 30 more yards. Look, if history is any guide, you're right. But I'm trying to encourage people to go in the right direction. They have gone in the right direction with the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. So God bless their hearts for the moment being, right? And if they turn, then we'll turn, right? But we're covering the news as it is right now. Okay, members of the day are Aladdin Flasher and Margaret Osborne. So tytnetwork.com/join to get the postgame tonight. John and I had a boisterous, excellent postgame last night. Yeah, and we were talking about our first political campaigns that we volunteered on, and it was pretty funny. And of course, the ones I volunteered on were Republican. So that's an interesting story. So members, check that out. And tonight, Anna and I will do a post game. And then afterwards, me, JR, and Jesus, truly old school on Old School.
I want to be part of that.
And be careful what you wish for. We'll ask you to stay. You want to stay? It's your call.
I got to make a few calls.
Oh, okay, she's got to make calls. She's got to make calls.
I'm a very busy person, you know?
Yeah. All right. What do you got for us, Anna?
All right. I want to start off with a very complicated story. And I say it's complicated because I'm not sure how I feel about it. So we'll discuss. A US citizen who was radicalized by Muslim extremists and actually went to the Middle East to help aid in terrorist attacks geared toward our troops ended up actually turning on Al-Qaeda, becoming an informant for the CIA. And even though he spent some time behind bars for the crimes that he committed, he was under the impression that after he got out, he would get some witness protection or some protection program so he wouldn't be harmed or targeted by individuals that he used to work with when he was a terrorist. Now that he's out of prison though, it turns out that he has not received any protection and is concerned about whether or not it was a smart idea for him to agree to give all this information, knowing that he wasn't going to get the protection that he was originally promised. Now, the story is about one specific person, but understand that there are broader ramifications when it comes to potential informants working with prosecutors, working with the CIA, and giving important information in regard to terrorists and terrorist plots. Now,
and Anna, before you explain the context of the story, I just want to explain that at the end, I will tell you why they did it. Because as you read the story, you're like, why did they at the end renege on this guy? It doesn't seem to make any sense. Well, there's a very real political reason why they did it, so I'll explain later.
Right, so let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about how he was captured and prosecuted. Now, he was captured back in 2008 after training for months at Al-Qaeda camps. Bryant Neal Venus is his name. He quickly turned on his fellow jihadists and began helping American investigators dismantle the group. Even the federal judge who sentenced him described his cooperation as remarkable. Now, understand that he didn't turn on Al-Qaeda on his own. He actually got caught while he was in the Middle East, and then he was brought to the United States and prosecuted. Now, when he was caught, he immediately turned on Al-Qaeda and gave the prosecutors the information necessary to capture other terrorists and also figure out, which terrorist plots were planned against the United States and troops abroad. Now, here's what he said to the New York Times. He said, I helped them, meaning the US, kill my friends. If that doesn't show how you're willing to turn your life around, I don't know what will. Now, he took part in 100 interviews. He also reviewed 1,000 photographs and helped in more than 30 law enforcement investigations. Prosecutors have also said that he was the single most valuable cooperating witness about Al-Qaeda activities spanning his time in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Also, one day before he was released, Venus learned that he would not be granted protection. So he did get a prison sentence, he served his sentence, and then one day before he was gonna get out, he was informed that he was not going to receive the protection that he was promised. Now, why? Why? What reason did the Department of Homeland Security give for denying him this protection? Well, apparently a psychologist who examined him during his final days in prison said he could be a possible threat to the people protecting him. The psychological evaluation caught everyone off guard, including the judge. In fact, the judge was furious about that psychological evaluation. He received another psychological evaluation that indicated that he posed absolutely no threat or no risk to the individuals who could potentially protect him. But it didn't matter. The Department of Homeland Security did not change its mind. They decided not to give him the protection that was originally promised to him.
So as I read the whole story, at first I was wondering, and they don't reveal it till the end. So who's the one who ordered that he not get the protection? Because the prosecutor wanted him to get the protection. The defense attorney wanted it, or already, that's it, we should be done. The judge also wanted it. Okay, then we should be triply done. And the FBI who worked on the case wanted him to get it. So what the hell happened? Well, the higher ups in the Justice Department are the ones who at the last second said, we disagree with everyone, we're not giving him witness protection. Why? It's a political decision. They don't want to seem like they gave someone who was in Al-Qaeda witness protection.
Right.
They want, it's the Trump administration, and they want to say, oh, we're tough on Al-Qaeda, and we're not like the softies like the Obama guys who were going to give him witness protection. We showed him, ha ha, right? Now let's dissect how stupid that is. First of all, let's be really clear. I have no sympathy for Venus, okay? They lay it out in a way of like, oh, this poor schmuck, he gets involved in he converted to Islam in 2004 because he liked a girl at a mall or something.
No. And I don't think anyone is even trying to illustrate it in that way. He was a bad guy. He wasn't radicalized by a woman he met at the mall. He had deep disdain for the US government. He had deep disdain for our military. He absolutely despised our foreign policy, something that I can relate to, but of course that does not give you any type of warrant to go out there and be radicalized and carry out terrorist attacks. He would help members of Al-Qaeda carry out violent actions against our military members in the Middle East.
He was planning to, but never got a chance to.
Right.
So that's what the FBI and the prosecutors say. So look, we have a slight difference on the reading of the New York Times story. I thought that they tried to paint him in a little bit of a sympathetic light. I wasn't buying it because look, let's just go over what an idiot he is in a couple of different ways and a bad guy. One, he converts and becomes a fundamentalist. No interest. That's monumentally stupid in my view of the world. And then he listens to Anwar al-Awlaki, who was a recruiter for Al-Qaeda, and he's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Oh, this jihad sounds so much, so glorious, right? And then he goes to Pakistan, northern Pakistan and Afghanistan, and finds out it's a miserable life. Oh, you schmuck of schmucks. Of course it's a miserable life. But like these guys, they really get into it. They're so stupid. They think like, oh, we're gonna go there and we're gonna fight like I see in the movies and then we're gonna win or something. I don't know, right? And he's like, it turns out that he went there and they were asked to sleep in flea-infested sleeping bags. It's northern Waziristan. What did you think was gonna happen? And he says they got bad food like rice and potato something or other that gave him diarrhea. You're going to North Waziristan to join Al-Qaeda. What did you think was going to happen? And by the way, that shouldn't be the worst of it. The worst of it should be that you're being asked to kill other human beings.
That's right.
Including your former countrymen, right?
Also, according to the New York Times, Venus suggested bombing the Long Island Railroad as a way to hurt the New York economy. So again, I just want to really emphasize, no sympathy for this guy. He's a bad guy.
And then when we the Americans capture him, he's like, yeah, that was uncomfortable over there. Okay, screw it. Here, I'll give you info on all my former friends that I spent a lot of time with, bonded with, etc. And go ahead and kill them all. I mean, look, I'm glad he turned on Al-Qaeda, and there's one upside here for the government that I'll explain in a second, but this is a bad guy every way you slice it. So now having said that, if you don't give him witness protection, then the word of the government doesn't mean anything. And the next person who is negotiating for witness protection will think, no, I'm not gonna help you. I'm not gonna help you with the mob. I'm not gonna help you with Al-Qaeda. I'm not gonna help you with terrorism, because it turns out the US government doesn't keep its word and is not gonna protect me and I'm gonna die. So no deal. That is such a terrible precedent. Just think it through for a second instead of your own stupid political calculation. Worry about the country and our national security. I'll give you one really interesting example. We captured Nazis, obviously some Nazis and some high-level Nazis during World War II, and we brought them to America. You know what the interrogators did? They waterboarded them. No, they didn't. They didn't waterboard them, they didn't torture them. They played ping pong with them and then gave them steak dinners. Why? Because they like Nazis? No. You know why? Because they wanted information. And so the Nazis would get here, they're in the middle of a terrible war, etc. They get here and there's no fleas, and they get a nice steak dinner and they're like, you know, Bob, you're a good guy. Here, I'll tell you where the U-boats are. Yes, that's how you get information.
Actually, with Venus, what happened was the FBI had taken him to Katz's Delicatessen in New York City, and that was when he decided to start talking. Like, all it took was a pastrami sandwich for him to start talking, which is kind of incredible. But
no, I don't blame him on that.
Right.
They have good pastrami sandwiches.
But the one thing that I do want to say is, you know, everyone who was involved in his case, from the judge to the prosecutor to the defense attorney, everyone who was involved in it agreed that he was such an incredibly important informant in capturing other extremists that wanted to cause real harm to America and Americans abroad. And so having informants like that matters. And what I'm worried about is not, if you renege on your promises, then you are going to deter other potential informants from sharing vital information about terrorists and terrorist activities abroad. So that is what I'm concerned about. Even though, you know, the more primitive part of me just wants to say, nah, you don't get witness protection. Sorry, you're a bad guy. You know, that's my primitive part of me. But also, when you think about it in a rational way and you think about you know, the broader ramifications, you can't renege on that promise.
Yeah, look, my friends and family live in New York. I grew up in New Jersey, so I have no sympathy whatsoever for this guy. But we got to be smart, because otherwise we won't get information to prevent those bombings. So at the end of the article, they talk about how for a while the government was paying for his hotel room as they figured out whether he's going to witness protection or not. Then they stopped paying for it. Then he had to go on food stamps because he couldn't get a job. That's not our problem, man. That's his problem. He should have thought of that before. But you at least need to put him in witness protection so he doesn't get killed. It's not about him. It's about the next cases, as Anna pointed out. Right. Now, that's the heart of the story. I just want to say two quick asides about what I learned in this story about how effective or ineffective our government is. One really positive and one negative. So the positive is, it turns out that he said they explained that in the drone strikes, based on the information that he gave them, they actually got all those guys. So the guys that he had been with. And it's also fascinating information about Al-Qaeda. There was like a 300-pound, 6'5" Kuwaiti guy.
I love this part of the story, because it just gives you a lot of insight into how they think about America.
Yeah, he wanted to be a suicide bomber, but it turns out he really liked American goods. In fact, the main terrorist leader that this guy communicated with loved McDonald's and Arby's. Okay, and so one of the guys had studied in Texas and loved barbecue. And something like these really all-American stuff. But the Kuwaiti guy thought, so then why do you want to be a suicide bomber? And he said, well, it's a one-way ticket to heaven.
One-way ticket to paradise.
You know what's a one-way ticket to paradise? Go back to Texas and eat barbecue. Okay, that's paradise.
Is it?
I think it is. Anyway, but so it turns out sometimes the drone strikes work. That's good news. They kill a lot of civilians, but it's good to see that they actually kill some bad guys too. And now the bad news. This is what I've been saying for over a decade. And no one else seems to notice this, but the CIA is totally incompetent. So this guy, this schmuck of schmucks from the middle of New York is like, wanders into Al-Qaeda and finds out senior leadership and helps wipe them out. Why don't you send in a spy to do likewise. Apparently they can't tell anything. They're like, oh, a dude from Queens, come on in, right? So why don't, and he's a white guy who converted.
Hispanic.
Okay, whatever, right? I can find a white guy, find a Hispanic guy, find a black guy, find a Muslim American. The CIA should have infiltrated the hell out of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Apparently they're not taking enough risks. And it's easy for me to say, yes, but I didn't sign up to be in the CIA. Do your job.
Yeah. Let's focus on what's going on in Texas. There's a lot more going on than barbecue, so let's talk about it. A Texas judge has been accused of using torture tactics to retaliate against a specific defendant that he felt was out of order in court. Now, this case involves a man who was convicted of soliciting sex by a minor, and his conviction indicated that he would get a pretty lengthy sentence of 60 years behind bars. But that conviction was thrown out because of the treatment that he received from the judge. Now, the judge in this story is Judge George Gallagher. And apparently during this case, he had strapped a stun strap onto the defendant. And what the stun strap does is essentially electrocute an individual who is supposed to be a threat to people in the courtroom. But the problem in this case was that the defendant did not serve as a threat. In fact, the defendant was just responding to the judge in a way that the judge didn't like, and as a result got shocked 3 separate times. Now, there was a court, that a panel of judges that responded to this case, and they did find that Judge George Gallagher was out of line in this case. Now, let me give you the specific details. Now, defendants are sometimes strapped with a stun belt around their legs. The device or the devices are used to deliver a shock in the event the person gets violent or attempts to escape. In the case of Terry Lee Morris, though, the device was used as punishment for refusing to answer a judge's questions. During his 2014 trial on charges of soliciting sexual performance from a 15-year-old girl, the judge shocked Morris 3 separate times. Now, how bad is the shock? Is it debilitating? Is it, severe enough to warrant throwing this case out? Well, the stun belt delivers an 8-second 50,000 volt shock to the person wearing it, which immobilizes him so that bailiffs can swiftly neutralize any security threat. When activated, the stun belt can cause the person to seize, suffer heart irregularities, urinate or defecate, and suffer possibly crippling anxiety as a result of fear of the shocks. Now, he did suffer from severe anxiety. In fact, the shocks were so bad that he was too afraid to go back for his sentencing hearings. And since he wasn't there, they had to throw out that case. They threw out the conviction. Now, to be fair, he will receive a new trial. But what did he say in court that upset the judge so much? Well, the judge asked him to enter a plea. And apparently the defendant had a lawsuit against the judge and asked the judge to recuse himself as a result of that lawsuit. And he also did not want to work with a defense attorney that was given to him. That was all he said. Judge didn't like it, stunned him. Asked him to enter a plea again, didn't do exactly what the judge wanted, stunned him again. And then finally a 3rd time it happened. So again, the case got thrown out. He's getting a new trial, luckily. But this is insane. You can't torture defendants because they're not acting in a certain way.
So a bunch of problems here. Look, this is why you shouldn't put stun belts on human beings. If you say, hey, look, we should give the cops the tasers so that if they're about to shoot someone, use the taser instead, okay, that's fine. But it doesn't look like it's stopping them from shooting people anyway. It just seems like they're using it when they could normally use their hands, but that's a pain, okay. I mean, I wasn't gonna kill this guy anyway, but let's tase him. Okay, that's bad enough and that's a separate thing. But when you put it on a human being like they're a dog, you know what's gonna happen? They're gonna abuse it. At first it's gonna be, oh, if there's someone who's in imminent danger, then maybe danger, and then maybe I don't like what you're saying. In this case, the defendant was actually completely right. He said, I sued you. You should definitely recuse yourself from this case. That's correct, right? So the judge can't be impartial. And then the judge proved his case by shocking him for no reason when he was not a physical threat.
That's right.
And so the thing that's also super frustrating about this is, so they throw out that particular case against him. But nothing ever happens to Judge George Gallagher, because if you're in power, you can assault people and you can do whatever you want and get away with it. So, I mean, if the defendant had used a stun gun on the judge 3 different times, and by the way, 8 seconds of 50,000 volts, 8 seconds. That is an incredibly long time to get shocked. Would the court have said, oh, well, the defendant, tisk, you shouldn't have used a stun gun on the judge. Okay, well, judge, you're free to go, but we won't do anything to the defendant. No, the defendant would be in a world of trouble. He would get years and years of imprisonment for that. But if you're a defendant, you're treated like a dog.
So, a couple different points that I'd really like to make. So, point number 1 is this is torture. He did not serve as an imminent threat to anyone. He just had the audacity to ask the judge to recuse himself for a specific and accurate reason. And as a result, he gets, I mean, cruel and unusual punishment is something that we are supposed to be against as Americans. But even if you look at this guy and you think, well, he solicited sex from a minor, I have no sympathy for him, I don't care how he's treated, fine, okay, sure. But also understand that taxpayers in Texas now have to spend more of their resources on a retrial because this judge can't handle someone speaking to him in this kind of, in this way, right? So he has to go through this entire trial process again. It's gonna cost more taxpayer money. This is just it's a giant waste. Even if you don't care about the inhumane treatment of this defendant, why would we allow or be in favor of a judge treating anyone like this? And look, I don't love slippery slope arguments, but it is a slippery slope. If you embolden judges to torture people like this, torture defendants like this, who's to say that they wouldn't treat other defendants of non-violent crimes in a similar fashion? It's absolutely ridiculous. So luckily, the Texas 8th Court of Appeals heard this case against the judge's actions, and they ruled against him. Now, as far as I've seen, and I've done a ton of research on this story, he hasn't faced any type of consequence or any ramifications for his actions. But here is what Justice Yvonne Rodriguez said about this case. We do not believe the trial judges can use stun belts to enforce decorum. A stun belt is a device meant to ensure physical safety. It is not an operant conditioning collar meant to punish a defendant until he obeys a judge's whim. The court cannot sit idly by and say nothing when a judge turns a court of law into a Skinner box, electrocuting a defendant until he provides the judge with behavior he likes.
Now, this is how we dehumanize people. There should be legal ramifications for the judge, but there's 2 different justice systems in America, so that is unlikely to happen. By the way, the defense lawyer was also miserable. He didn't even object while his client is getting shocked over and over again. And so this is an absolute embarrassment. But look, again, that is why you don't put stun belts on human beings, because eventually that slope slides. And thank God the higher courts at least put an end to it and said it's not acceptable. But it's not acceptable to put it on him in the first place. We're supposed to treat fellow human beings that way. Because he was a terrible person, or an alleged, by the way, he wasn't even convicted yet, alleged to be a terrible person.
He was convicted. He was convicted.
But by this judge? No, but at that point, no. He said he was asking for a guilty or not guilty plea. At that point, he had not been convicted, okay? He's asking for a plea. So he's zapping a guy that we don't even know yet is guilty. But if we say that's okay, then we say torture is okay. And that's not the country we want to be in, and that's not our rule of law. So we got to stop being so barbaric to one another.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we still have the story of Stormy Daniels and why that might put Trump's lawyer in a lot of legal jeopardy in a couple of different ways, which then puts Trump in a world of trouble. The story has turned from humorous and salacious to one of a decent amount of import politically. We'll tell you about that when we come back.
All right, post game here in Studio B. It's the green screen magic of internet television.
A lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of.
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do some. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, Ben, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open, she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk.
Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna.
Yeah.
When we're off the air, I'm gonna be like, how is this gonna work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like at some point, you're like, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's, and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. What do you mean why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see her.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship, and we don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it, but instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Back on the Young Turks. Gabby Marita writes in, the US government broke a promise it made to someone? Well, that certainly never happened before. I enjoy that sarcasm. Jack McAnally says, going back on your word to protect them, like many Trump decisions, why would anyone make a deal with the US in the future? Yesterday, I talked about at least 2 broken promises, but then you could do probably 2 stories a day on that. One was to Australian government about the steel tariffs, and the other one was about the elephant hunting. And so we shouldn't be surprised that the Trump administration broke its word. And then finally, Lee Cox says, how long until every criminal defendant has to wear one while in a courtroom about the stun belts? And Lee, you're exactly right, and that's exactly what I'm worried about. All right, guys. And by the way, shoptyt.com for this lovely shirt, Bernie So Punk, okay? And you could also get Covfefe, which is Oh, every time I wear it, I still get compliments on, and very stable genius as well.
Real quick, Brett is wearing a shirt today that just says, "Are we great yet?" And it's like are we selling that shirt?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, no. Okay. It's a great shirt.
Okay.
Anyway, but we have lots of great shirts at Shop TYT, so check it out.
Okay.
All right.
That was hilarious. All right, what's next?
Stormy Daniels, an adult porn actress known as Stephanie Clifford in her real life, has filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump. And of course, this has to do with the $130,000 payment that she received from Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, and the non-disclosure agreement that she had signed as in return for that payment. Now, the lawsuit essentially claims that since Cohen's been talking about this case, and since Trump himself did not sign that non-disclosure agreement, then it's null and void, essentially freeing her to share her story and talk about what she's experienced. She's also claiming that Michael Cohen, up until very recently, had been threatening her and telling her not to share the details of this story with the public. Now, she did file a civil suit against the president in Los Angeles Superior Court on Tuesday, alleging that since Trump never signed the non-disclosure agreement their lawyers set up weeks before the 2016 election, their hush agreement is null and void. There are other components of this lawsuit, though, that I want to share with you guys. Clifford and Cohen signed the contract, but Trump never did. The suit alleges that he purposefully did not sign the agreement so he could later, if need be, publicly disavow any knowledge of the agreement or Clifford. The suit argues that even if the hush agreement was valid without Trump's signature, Cohen voided it when he made multiple statements to the media, and we know that he did. He talked about how he paid that $130,000 out of his own pocket, that Trump knew nothing about it. And even if that were the case, there are some potential legal consequences to that. We'll get into that in just a minute. The lawsuit also alleges that when the story went public in January, Cohen used intimidation and coercive tactics to force her to sign a false statement denying that she had an affair with Trump. If that is proven to be true, that could also have severe consequences for Cohen himself. He could potentially get disbarred, and again, we'll touch on that in just a minute. Also, the hush agreement says Clifford has confidential information related to Trump, which includes, quote, information, certain still images and or text messages.
Okay, that's really important. So let's begin to break it down. First, let me start with that last part. When this story first came out, I had two thoughts about it. One, I don't care. So he slept with a porn star. Is anyone surprised? Melania, are you really surprised? No one should be surprised by this. And I don't care what he does in his personal life. And by the way, Trump is not a guy who ran on family values. He's a Republican and all the evangelicals loved him, but that's their problem, not my problem. Trump didn't say that he was the best family guy, to be fair to him. He was on a picture on the Playboy cover when evangelical leaders were posing with him in his office, etc. So that salacious part of the story is totally uninteresting to me. It's fun, but it's not politically important. But I was wondering, why did they pay her? There was already 21 women who had accused him of far worse things, sexual assault, sexual harassment. This was consensual. So, okay, he didn't want it to get out because it was right after Melania was having Barron, and that's awkward. But I'm like, but Trump, he could just deny it. I mean, that's the #1 go-to move for Trump. I deny it. I strongly deny it, right? So why in this case did he bother to pay the $130,000 and potentially get himself into legal trouble? Oh, she had pictures and texts. So the texts are bad because it's gonna show definitively coming from Trump's phone, probably. That's why they mentioned it in the lawsuit. And it's gonna say the stuff that's dirty, dirty. That's one thing, and maybe bad enough. But if she's got pictures, okay, right?
Oh my God.
That's why they settled. I'm like, oh, that now, when I saw that in the complaint, I was like, that's it, now it makes sense. Okay, so that fits in, explains why we're even in the middle of this mess. Now, let's talk about the legal ramifications. So, now it's one thing for Michael Cohen to get her to do a non-disclosure agreement or a hush agreement. That happens all the time. That's perfectly normal and legal. Now, that's basically saying this might or might not have happened, but I definitely don't want you to talk about it, okay? Sometimes people do that just to get rid of a headache, and if it's a small amount, and that's fairly normal. This is a large amount, and coming out of the lawyer's own pocket is really weird. That gives you an indication that perhaps it did happen, right? And then they want her to be quiet about it. But that's, either way, that's fine. But when you ask her to say it didn't happen, that's a totally different situation. And when you have her sign something that they're going to put out publicly, as they did recently when the news broke, and you know that it did happen and that's why you paid her the hush money in the first place, well, you took a thing that was perfectly legal and then made it illegal. And so even if you don't go to jail over that or anything like that, you're going to get disbarred. I mean, that is disbarment 101 for a lawyer to ask someone to put out a false statement that you know is false, okay? And now with his own admissions that he was involved, that's also pretty much proving that he knew that those statements were false and that they were doing this, okay? So look, again, they're going to have to go through legal proceedings to disbar him, etc., but a world of trouble there, okay? Now, point 2 is way more important. So that's Michael Cohen's problem. That's a lawyer and see what happens, right? But the fact that Trump did not pay her is a bigger problem. They actually handled this in the worst possible way. Because if Trump had said, yes, I slept with a porn star, what are you going to do about it? There's actually no legal issue there at all. If he had said, I deny it, I strongly deny it, still no legal issue. He lied, oh, so what? Like politicians lie all the time, he's lied a million times, that has no legal implications. But when they say Trump didn't pay it, Michael Cohen did. Trump can give money to his own campaign. Someone else cannot give $130,000 to Trump's campaign. That's an in-kind contribution. They'll make the case, oh no, it wasn't related to the campaign. It happened right before the election, but that's not why we settled it. Good luck with that. But overall, it is clear that it was right before the election, related to the campaign. Michael Cohen paid $130,000, which is way above the limit. Michael Cohen's going to jail. Now look, this is a thing.
He's not going to jail.
Okay, if there was any justice in the world.
There's no justice.
And the FEC operated, but it's not just the FEC. FEC is useless. That's the Federal Election Commission. They got 3 Republicans that'll block anything. If Michael Cohen came out on national TV drunk, like Sam Nunberg, or straight or sober, and came out and said, yes, I had her do a false statement. Yes, I gave $130,000 in-kind contribution that I illegally shouldn't have given. The FEC, 3 Republicans will go, no, not buying it. Okay, not free to go. But it's also a violation of laws in states. And in the state of New York, local prosecutors can go after him. So we'll see if that plays out. Now, the last part of the puzzle is political. Now, Michael Cohen now in a lot of legal and career trouble, a lot, okay? And apparently, a recent story that came out just yesterday, Michael Cohen tried to go get the $130,000 from Trump because he's like, man, wait, I thought you were gonna pay me back. I gave her $130,000, but I didn't sleep with her, you slept with her. He apparently had trouble getting his call returned. So what happened? Trump, as usual, screwed him. That's what he does to everyone, including his closest allies and now apparently his lawyer. Here's a person you don't want to screw over, your lawyer. He knows everything about you. So if Cohen, faced with a lot of legal jeopardy, turns on Trump, okay.
So I have absolutely no hope whatsoever when it comes to Cohen getting in trouble for making an in-kind campaign contribution. And the reason why I say that is because he could easily say, as his defense, that he had made that contribution not to help Trump's campaign, but to prevent the information from getting out and harming Trump's family. I remember Edwards had made a similar argument or case when there was some money involved in the affair that he had. Right?
I know, but Anna, look, I wouldn't be so sure. I hear you because almost like there's rampant corruption in America. Almost everyone gets away with it. So you're right to be skeptical overall. But some people do go to jail for campaign violations. Just ask Dinesh D'Souza. And so he got his mistress to give extra money but he paid her back, which was actually meant that he went over the limit and he lied about it. And he went to jail. So it happens, especially to conservative idiots who don't even know how to do corruption. Most of it is legal. You can just give it to a PAC. You can do an independent expenditure. You can do dark money. You can do it 100 different ways, but you can't do this, where an individual gives $130,000 essentially to a campaign, right? Dinesh D'Souza, I think, gave $10,000 with him and his mistress and maybe his wife, real classy guy, okay? And look up the details online. And then he had to go to prison for it. So Michael Cohen looks like he's not only in trouble, but reeling. The fact that he's going to the press and now saying like, well, I mean, there was an agreement but Trump didn't sign it and I don't have the money. Okay, that's bad news for Trump, man. Now, if Trump pays him the money, he's damned if he does. If he doesn't pay him the money, then Cohen's in trouble, damned if he doesn't, right? So, and she's gonna win on this particular lawsuit. Why? You don't get to do a non-disclosure agreement that you didn't sign. So maybe she is not allowed to disclose things about Michael Cohen because he signed, but Trump never signed. That's the essence of a contract. You did not agree. You were not a party to that contract. She can say anything she wants about you. Tick, 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 tick. A wonderful little time bomb there. And speaking of wonderful, credit to whoever came up with that graphic.
I did.
Oh, look at this. Okay.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
To come up with porn ultimatum.
Yeah.
All right, another break. When we come back, more stories for you guys. Go.
Special election day coverage dropping.
An amazing power panel.
Look at this panel. You want to talk about power?
Like a smart Destiny's Child.
We're all too strong.
We start a revolution. Yes, another one.
Aren't you excited? Wow. Some of the best writers in the country are right here on this panel, with the obvious exception of John Iadarola.
Let's not so quickly discount Harry Potter fan fiction.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
What ran me away from Christianity was judgment and condemnation.
Assaulting peaceful protesters in North Dakota, crazier than bombing Yemen, crazier than bombing Syria so much they ran out of bombs.
Reductive interpretation of what their motives are, what Putin's are, by these amateur experts is just beyond.
We don't kill our journalists, and they do.
Hey, what's up?
Aaron, what do you like better? The rabies or the rabies? Go. All right, back on TYT. Rebel headquarters is next, and you guys are going to love it. Greg Edwards is going to be on. He is one of the candidates attacked by the Democratic Party, okay? And then the second guest is a grandmother that has been called a dangerous atheist and the most dangerous person in the Tennessee Democratic Party.
Fun.
Oh, super fun. Yeah. Rebel headquarters is gonna be awesome. Post game's awesome. Old school tonight. You're gonna love that too. Me, JR, and Jesus, the original crew. So tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. Real quick, last night we introduced this, Volunteers for Allison Hartson. Super easy to volunteer, it takes about 15 seconds. And we wanted to see if we can get 2,000 volunteers. Forget about raising money, don't forget about it, that's really important. Okay, but justicedemocrats.com/Allison. Okay, but we want to get volunteers and have Allison's army. So let's check in on it. We started with 700 people last night. Actually, by the time we got on the air, it was 760 volunteers, trying to get to 2,000. Let me see, AllisonHartson. 1,001 volunteers. We were trying to get over 1,000 yesterday, and we're there. AllisonHartson.com/now, okay, AllisonHartson.com/now. Go volunteer, it just takes 15 seconds. And even if all you do is like her on Facebook or Twitter, it still makes a big difference. So get in the game, let's get to 2,000 volunteers. Anna, what's next?
All right. A new dossier sent to the Vatican specifically identifies priests in the Catholic Church who are actually gay. Now, this was actually compiled, this list was compiled by a male escort who says that he was tired of the hypocrisy within the Catholic Church, and he felt that it was his duty to identify these individuals. Now, this 1,200-page dossier containing the names of 34 actively gay priests and 6 seminaries in Italy has been sent to the Vatican by the Archdiocese in Naples. The large file contains explicit WhatsApp messages, erotic photos, and other evidence, but it's important to point out that none of the 40 priests and seminarians were accused of pedophilia or having sexual relations with minors. So based on what we know, this just indicates that there are some gay priests that indulge in male escort activity, but it's all consensual behavior. Allegations compiled by this man, he's a gay male escort, told local media that he couldn't put up with the priest's hypocrisy any longer. He said the aim is not to hurt the people mentioned, but to help them understand that their double life is not useful to them or to all the people for whom they should be a guide and an example to follow.
So I have mixed feelings about this. I hate that he's releasing the pictures, and are some priests gay? Of course, but on the other hand, they don't admit it and they speak out against other gay people. I don't know about those 40 in particular, but the church overall does. Then I saw the statement by the church in response to this, and it made me a little ill. He said, there remains the gravity of the cases for which those who have erred must pay the price, the Vatican wrote, and be helped to repent for the harm done. When, at a moment when the church still says it's a grave sin to be gay and they have to repent for who they are, it's hard not to sympathize with the escort who says, well, then you should know who they actually are. On the other hand, I feel terrible for them. They're leading this miserable double life.
Right.
But maybe he's gonna liberate them in a sense. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I hope that he does liberate them. Look, my biggest issue with these priests, if they're engaging in consensual relationships, there's no problem with that whatsoever. My only problem is that the Catholic Church still, till this day, has been very negative and judgmental toward the LGBT community. And if you yourself are gay and you're living this double life, I feel like it is your responsibility to, be the antithesis of what you currently are, which is this judgmental priest. There's so many gay people out there who still feel disenfranchised, and it's important for these priests to come out and be who they really are.
All right, bye-bye. welcome to Rebel Headquarters. We have an amazing show for you guys today. First guest is going to be someone basically attacked by the Democratic establishment. We'll get to that in a second. But the second guest is one doozy of a guest as well. A grandmother described as the most dangerous candidate in Tennessee, also described to be a dangerous atheist. Okay, I think you're going to love her. So let's get started. Greg Edwards is running in Pennsylvania's 7th district, and he is a progressive candidate. He's a Just Democrat. And apparently, the Democratic establishment is not in favor of Greg Edwards. So Greg, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, it's good to be here, Cenk. How are you?
Great, great. So there's a lot to talk about in your race. There's redistricting in Pennsylvania. There's Democratic primary. There's the people who you're going to go up against is the state of the district itself. But first, let's start with the big news. Let's talk about what happened to you recently. So how was it that the Democratic Party got you a message that they didn't want you in this race?
Well, we had found out through a variety of sources that they basically wanted the front-running candidate who had raised the most money, who happened to be a candidate of color, to take another position, to not run for Congress. And so that came back to our campaign through a variety of sources, actually from DC and throughout the nation. I got a couple of phone calls. And then there were some folks on the ground that said, they're basically trying to get you out the race.
So Greg, did you say you raised the most money in that race on the Democratic side?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the fourth quarter, we outraised through small dollar donations all of our Republican and Democratic opponents. And that was, something that we actually didn't expect to do, but we have an incredible ground game and there's a lot of momentum and folks are really excited about the campaign that we're running.
So now the Democratic establishment gives the excuse every time, well, look guys, you got to have money to be competitive and it's all about the money, but Greg has the most money, so that excuse is eliminated. Greg's a pastor, he's a civil rights activist. I'm just going to read you a quick list of his awards. The NAACP Man of Vision Award, the Peace Pilgrim of the Year Award, the Community Development Award by the Allentown Human Relations Commission, the William Gray III Leadership Award, and the list goes on and on and on. So if it's not your record of achievement, if it's not that you're not progressive enough, nobody can make that argument, and it's not the money, what is it? Why do you think they wanted you out of the race?
Well, I think, Cenk, that they wanted to clear the path for a more establishment-like candidates. I think that they were thinking that even with the redistricting, the candidate of choice from the establishment would be kind of a Republican-like or a Democrat-like candidate. And we were raising money and building a ground game that this area has never seen. And we were doing it really without the help of the establishment. And I think that that was intimidating to the powers that be. So.
And Greg, was the message to you subtle and maybe there was a misunderstanding, or was it clear?
Well, they had called us to a meeting and my staff and I attended and they had stated they wanted to know how much money we raised and they wanted to know about our staff and they had asked who we were using and if we were using any of their political consultants. And the reality is that we weren't using any of their political consultants. And then it got back to me from one of our local officials and some folks from DC that they were seeking for me to run for a lower office for state senate. So the gentleman came back from DC and basically said, yes, that's true. Though we didn't ask you directly, we were wanting to see if you would be willing to run for a lower seat.
Yeah, well, that seems pretty clear. Now, one of their stated reasons is, well, we got to get a Republican-like guy to be able to win in that district. But we had redistricting in Pennsylvania. So what's the state of your district today?
Well, I mean, we are so excited. The district is now ungerrymandered. It's all of Lehigh County, all of Northampton County. We have an urban district that has Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, parts of southern Monroe County, including Stroudsburg, East Stroudsburg, lots of colleges. It's a much more urban district, and the profile of the district in terms of the racial demographics certainly change. about 25% of the district now is about people of color, and so we're really excited. This district was gerrymandered, and it wasn't continuous, and the demographic wasn't the same, and now we're not just viable, we are really the candidate to beat, and we're really excited about that. This really looks like the people have an opportunity to elect equitable representation that reflects the community.
And I know that district went from an R+4, meaning the Republicans have an advantage by about 4 points, which, by the way, in a wave is not very much at all, and certainly within contention. But now that it's ungerrymandered, it's Democrat +1. So there's no reason why a progressive shouldn't win that race. And I'm going to get to your policies in 1 second, Greg. But one more thing about the state of the race. It looks like the establishment attack against you might have backfired again. You just picked up an endorsement yesterday, didn't you?
Sure. So we picked up an endorsement from the Working Families Party of Pennsylvania. We also picked up today an endorsement from SEIU, their state council. So not only have we outraised all of our opponents on both the Republican and Democratic side through small dollar donations, through, I think at this point we have about 5,000 folks that have come on board and really believe that democracy needs to happen now. But we also have more endorsements than any other person running in the race. And I think that that's really important. I mean, I think it's important that progressive organizations are now putting their money where their mouth and their vision and mission is. And we are super excited about that.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to be clear to the audience too. These are not endorsements from establishment politicians who I personally couldn't care less about, but it's SEIU, Just Democrats, Progressive Change Campaign Committee, Common Defense, Working Families Party, the Collective PAC, Women's March Pennsylvania, etc. Real progressive grassroots groups that are getting behind Greg Edwards' campaign. So, and there's a reason why. You are the most progressive person in the race. If you're a Just Democrat, that means you don't take any corporate PAC money. That means you're uncorrupted. And so there's a lot of logic there. So, but tell us a little bit more about your policy positions.
Well, I mean, let me just say this. I think it's hard to run a political campaign and try to become who you've never been. And certainly healthcare is a priority. We think a single payer Medicare for all is the only way to go. That's not going to break the back of small businesses and also not bankrupt families. We have families all throughout the 7th Congressional District that are really hurting because of their lack of health care. Certainly in Pennsylvania, we rank number 48 in terms of our educational outcomes, and we believe universal preschool and debt-free college is the way to go. College is no longer a pathway to prosperity. It's really, kind of a pathway to poverty when folks leave college and they're shackled by this debt of exorbitant high student loans. And certainly, $15 an hour, which is what I'm advocating for as a minimum wage, a federal standard, $15 an hour, which is $30,000 a year. In Pennsylvania, our minimum wage is $7.25.
Jesus.
And that's our minimum wage. That doesn't include the waiters and the waitresses and the folks that are working in hotels and the folks that are bringing folks food. I mean, $7.25. And so we're saying at least we need $15 an hour, $30,000 a year. We don't think that that's asking too much. And and I think now is the time for us not to ratify the extremist agenda of Donald Trump and the Republicans, but now is the time really for us to be bold and to ask for the entire pie. Because after all, we've paid for it.
Yeah, and look, I've gone over and over on the show about American workers' productivity versus their flattening wages. And if wages had kept up with productivity, the average American worker would make $17,000 more per year, which is just stunning. And to back up what Pastor Edwards is saying there, that $7.25 for if you work 40 hours a week the whole year is $15,000. No, that you can't live on $15,000. That's why your message is resonating, because people know that if you work your tail off, getting $30,000 a year is not too much to ask for. Asking for health care so your family doesn't die is not too much to ask for. But one last thing about policy, you have a unique position on gun ownership. What is that?
Well, I mean, we believe that, first of all, we need to reestablish the federal ban on assault weapons. We need universal background checks that can't be remediated across state lines. I believe we need home safety checks for any person that wants to own more than one firearm. But I also believe that every person who wants a gun should have that gun registered, and also there should be an insurance policy and coverage of any person that wants to own a firearm. Once gun ownership is monetized, watch what happens to these situations that are happening across the nation in terms of guns being on the loose and lost and stolen controlled. Once the insurance companies and that industry gets involved into helping monetize gun ownership, I think there's going to be more prudence in terms of who gets guns and who doesn't get guns.
Yeah, it's not quite the Chris Rock strategy of $1,000 a bullet, but but it makes a lot of sense. If we have to register and insure our cars,
yes.
Why shouldn't we register and insure a killing machine that's
Absolutely.
a gun? And you might need it to defend yourself. And there's a lot of rural parts of Pennsylvania. I understand that, but if you can insure your car, you can insure your gun. So I want everybody to have the links for Greg Edwards as well. Edwardsforpa.com is a website. All these links are really easily clickable in the description box on YouTube and in the comments section on Facebook. So just go down there, check out the website, check out his policy positions. Volunteering is the most important thing because that actually gets you victories and people-powered campaigns. But if you can't volunteer or you live somewhere else, a donation for people who don't take corporate PAC money makes all the difference. Greg Edwards, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Cenk.
All right. Now, when we come back, you're gonna love this granny. She's considered a dangerous atheist in Tennessee, and she's coming for the Republicans, and they're running scared. We'll be right back. All right, back on Rebel headquarters. Now, this is an interview I'm really excited by. It's Gail Jordan, and I think you're gonna like her when you meet her. And to me, Gail is a real American. I'm gonna explain why. First, Gail, welcome.
Thank you.
Gail, you are a character. First of all, you've been called a dangerous atheist. You've got Republicans saying, I love this quote, in my 40 years plus in politics, I've seen few candidates as dangerous as Gail Jordan. That's from the lieutenant governor, apparently, in Tennessee.
Apparently.
Yes, so I can't wait to find out how dangerous you are. But you also have an interesting background. You're an Ironman competitor. You've got a small farm in Rutherford County. You raise longhorn cattle, goats, donkeys, and chickens.
That's me.
And you decided to attend law school at 50 years old.
That's it. That's right.
Wow, that's a life and a half.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
So are you a lawyer now?
I am. I became a lawyer in 2015.
Okay. So then you thought, why not get into politics while I'm at it?
Sure. Why not get into politics? Tennessee, we have a Republican supermajority here in Tennessee. Very, very rural, very Republican area. And the Republicans have been in control for about 8 years, complete control. So there are so many voices. There are so many progressive liberal voices in Tennessee whose ideas are not getting out. And I know that in order to run for office, you have to have a big mouth and a thick skin, and I have both. And so I actually ran for this seat in 2016, and I did about as well as every other Democrat in Tennessee. This is an area that Trump won by about 50 points. And so this seat became available. It became an open seat when the Republican in this seat took a Trump appointment in agriculture. So now it's an open seat, and election day is Tuesday.
So now this is a state Senate seat in Tennessee in the 14th district. Now they say that you can't win because you're an atheist.
Sure.
And well, in Tennessee, it's literally against the law, although it's an unconstitutional law. So tell us why you think you can win.
Because the voices that haven't been heard, the Democratic voices, understand that being an atheist is not, it's not disqualifying. We all understand here what freedom of religion is. We understand that that's the foundation of our country. And I have had the most positive experience. This is a highly religious area, and even my Christian supporters are trying to explain to other folks what the true meaning of freedom of religion is. You know, I advertise that I'm an advocate of religious freedom. If my opponent's religious freedom were under attack, I'd be first in line to be able to defend that. And so I know the statistics about an atheist holding office, blah, 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 but we have found that that may be true somewhere. It may not be true here. We have had so much positive support, and there have been so many voices that have spoken out, including Republican voices, because of the Tennessee Republican Party's attack on religious liberty.
And Gail, I'm curious, did you consider hiding the fact that you were an atheist when you were going to run?
I have been an atheist for about 10 years. I was a religious person for about 45 years, Cenk. And when my children reached their teenagerhood and they began asking me questions, I had raised them in church. We were all believers. I had 4 children real close together. And when they began to ask me those questions, I agreed to study with them and search with them. And the long and short of it is we came out the other side having lost the confidence that our beliefs, the beliefs that we had grown up with, the beliefs that we were embracing were true. It was just a loss of confidence. So for about 10 years, I have not been a believer. I've been a secular person. The word atheist, has negative connotations. And so we've tried to educate our folks about the meaning of the word. And I've tried to tell my story over and over again. When I ran for the seat in 2016, yes, I couldn't hide it altogether. I'm the executive director of an organization called Recovering from Religion, which supports and provides hope, healing, and community for folks who are struggling with religion. So I couldn't hide it, nor did I want to. I thought I would try to minimize it. And in 2016, when the Democrats were not being listened to or paid any attention to, it never even came up. But this go, it has become something of an issue.
Yeah, look, never run, never hide. right? So
right.
You got to be who you are. It's you can live with yourself if you lose, giving them what you got. You can't live with yourself if you lose being someone else.
I agree.
And I think that what people respect in politics is strength. And so whether they agree with you or disagree with you, if you come in strong and say, this is who I am and I'm gonna fight for everybody's religious liberty, including the liberty to not have a religion, I think people will get it. I think that the mainstream media and a lot of the conventional wisdom in both political parties don't give people enough credit. I think if you're honest with them and you're not a greasy politician and you're forthright, they'll at least respect you for it.
And Cenk, I agree with you, and that's the sentiment coming from so many of the supporters. And the funny thing is, my opponent is a very religious person, and he's put that on all of his literature and all of his website, and I understand that. And as I said, this is an area that Trump won by 50 points. So why they're coming so hard at me? You know, it makes you pause. It makes you wonder. This is today's card. I don't know if you can see this. This is the postcard I got in today's mail because I have kooky ideas. They have come at me so hard. As you said, the lieutenant governor has tweeted it. The lieutenant governor has sent emails about it. My opponent's campaign manager actually wrote an email to the pastors of the churches saying, you need to tell your congregation to vote for the Republican candidate because this lady is an atheist and of course she has no morals. And it's just been, it has done nothing but inflame our folks because it's such an attack on religious liberty.
Yeah, and they wouldn't do all that and spend money on those mailers if they weren't worried.
Right.
So, Gail, you got them running. Okay.
Something like that. That's
yeah, I love it. And so now they talk about your dangerous ideas. So it says here you're running on a pro-cannabis platform.
I am.
Because there wasn't enough curveballs in this race. So I love it. Why?
Here in Tennessee, we have a terrible opioid addiction problem, as do many areas, but particularly here in Tennessee. And so our pro-cannabis platform has to do with the pain relief. Obviously, there are diseases whose symptoms respond favorably to cannabis, but it also has to do with its application to our opioid addiction problem, our opioid addiction crisis. In addition to that, we have the business and tax revenue, and we have the criminal justice reform. These are all things that are a win-win-win for our area in Tennessee. We desperately need the relief that cannabis can give us in our opioid addiction problem. And then, as I said, the other things that we've mentioned. My opponent is a wealthy pharmacist, so surprise, he's against cannabis, and we need it so badly. We're campaigning on the expansion of Medicaid. Tennessee did not take the ACA, so every year we walk away from millions and millions of dollars that we've already paid in our federal dollars, and we leave our folks uninsured. And then we have the additional problem when those uninsured folks need care and they visit our rural hospitals. The hospitals try as much as they can, and they can't sustain without any kind of reimbursement. So they eventually close. We've lost 10 rural hospitals in the 8 years that the Republicans have been in control.
Wow, that's a stunning number. Yep. So. And then we're running short on time, but I know you want to fix the roads down there, and obviously you care about the education down there as well. And those are issues that resonate with people. But look, I think that they're scared of you for good reason. I think that people vastly underestimate the power of your idea about cannabis. I think the people already get it. The politicians don't get it. The government doesn't get it, but the people get it. They know that the opioid addiction problem isn't, as Trump says, drug dealers coming in from New Mexico. They know that it's actually coming from the pharmaceutical companies. We're not stupid. We see where it's coming from, right? And we know that we could do cannabis for painkiller. It's cheap. It doesn't cause addiction. It doesn't kill and destroy your family.
It's far less dangerous than alcohol.
Yeah, I think on that alone you could win. Let alone all the other things that you're doing to actually appeal to the voters in that district. So Gail, if you turn a plus 50 district into a win, man, you'll have lived up to the billing of the most dangerous grandmother in Tennessee.
There you go.
At least for the Republican Party.
That's a title I'm proud of.
All right, I want to show everybody your links. Gail Jordan for Senate, TN14.com there. And we'll have all the links down below in the description box on YouTube and then in the comment section on Facebook. Obviously, go check out all of Gail's positions because she's coming for the Republicans and she's going to represent you. Go get them, Gail.
Thank you, Cenk. Thanks so much.
All right. Man, I love that. Okay, I'm going to go raise some longhorn cattle. America. We'll come right back for the postgame.